All right. Good morning, everybody. Bert, how's the audio online? It's good? Okay. Go for it, Walt.
Okay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I would like to gavel in our 114th annual business meeting. And I'm delighted to tell you that our president's remarks will come from our president. Richard is online and is joining us this morning. And Brian, if you wouldn't mind helping us get that up.
Yeah, so Richard, if you go ahead and share your screen and turn on, well, I guess it's just audio and video for you, right? Okay, we can't hear you, so your mic might still, yeah, your mic's still muted.
I clicked it, but it didn't come on. I don't. Okay.
Yeah, technology.
We're on. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Go for it. Everybody can hear you.
Thank you, and welcome to the annual business meeting of the AAVSO. When the dues-paying members of a nonprofit organization make the effort to show up for the business meeting of an organization, they deserve straight, no-nonsense report on the health and achievements of the organization. Although I cannot be here with you this morning, I want to give you some straight talk about the AAVSO and what it is today. In a nutshell, today's AAVSO is stronger and better than it has been for many years. This is because we have balanced two great opposing forces that every nonprofit must face: the cost of delivering services that the organization provides versus the funds it has to support those services. At last year's membership meeting, we announced that the annual meeting would be held online only, but today we are sitting together in this room very much in person. What happened? Broadly, at the instigation of then President Gordon Myers, in 2020, the AAVSO changed its form of governance from a somewhat old-fashioned form consisting of a council and director to the more modern business form of a board of directors with an executive director. In the old days, the director basically ran the organization, and the council tended to rubber stamp the director's plans. AAVSO struggled to remain financially viable, relying in large part on operating funds from a few wealthy members. This culminated in several multi-million-dollar donations from the Clinton Ford family and established an investment portfolio usually called the endowment. Directors were expected to draw funds from the endowment to support a small staff of experts. As often happens, in good times, the AAVSO expanded services to members and hired more staff. When an economy is strong, this works. Over time, it does not work. When director Arnie Hendon retired and a new director, Stella Kafka, was hired, the council came to its senses and realized that the rate at which they were spending the endowment, the AAVSO was on a downward financial spiral. Director Stella was required to downsize staffing to a sustainable level to balance income versus expenses. However, she was expected to maintain the services that the organization provided at the original level. It's no surprise that her tenure was rocky. Under President Gordon Myers, the AAVSO changed to governance from council to board and hired staff led by the executive director. Gordon also asked the Harvard Community Partners to assess the AAVSO in creating a new strategic plan, a plan that an organization must have to be successful if it plans to move forward. In 2020, just as COVID-19 was in the process of changing everything, members of the new board were meeting weekly to assess the organization's strengths and weaknesses, its programs, its threats, and its opportunities, standard SWOT analysis. Fast forward to 2024. At the suggestion of Executive Director Brian Kloppenberg, the board set up two committees that have shaped today's AAVSO. The job of one committee was to look at everything that the AAVSO does and recommend what to keep, what to cut, and what to expand. To make a long story short, because AAVSO supports a multitude of small programs, the committee found that only one large annual activity, the annual meeting, consumed an inordinate amount of staff time and cost on the order of $80,000 each year. If we have 80 attendees, the endowment was subsidizing member attendance to the tune of $1,000 a person. The committee recommended at AAVSO on a one-year trial basis hold the annual meeting online only. I supported this reluctantly because as president, one of my responsibilities is to ensure the financial stability of the organization. As those who were there surely remember, there was a massive outcry against doing such a thing. This meeting is a result of a lot of hard work. To run an annual meeting at much lower cost, somewhere around $30,000. The other committee's job, the second committee's job, was to pick up, dust off, and reconsider the strategic plan from 2020. This became a 6-month effort to assess the goals and purpose of every part of the organization in the context of the larger world of astronomy. We've known for years that big surveys will change the landscape of astronomy. And we also wanted to know how AAVSO is used and who uses it. Our founding story, if you will, is that somehow collecting lots of estimates of stars would somehow become scientifically valuable. This was largely true for many years. But Brian took a more nuanced look at what data the people who transform photometry into knowledge, the professional astronomers, what they want and what they actually use. We also looked at which services that the AAVSO provides as a science-oriented nonprofit organization and realized that we needed to place more emphasis on the services that the world values most. I will say right out what I said to the board at the board meeting on Friday. We have done a terrible job informing our stakeholders what the strategic plan entails. By stakeholders, I include you guys here in this room, the AAVSO's paid staffers, our most enthusiastic observers, our biggest donors, and the board itself. On Friday, we held an intensive educational session for the board to ensure that every member of the board will be up to speed on the strategic plan and be able to answer questions from members. In analyzing what the AAVSO does, we realize, for example, that AAVSO has always provided non-traditional adult education services to the entire astronomical community. Unfortunately, dues-paying members misunderstood our turn toward education and more relevant science to mean to the exclusion of what we do now. More than anything else, the board and the members need to know that the goal is to enhance our current ways of observing and collecting data, not replace them. This includes supporting and valuing visual observations, as well as teaching our digital observers how to do better photometry using their current equipment. It will cost money and take time to do that necessary communication. Let me now return to my opening statement. Today's AAVSO is stronger and better than it has been for years. We have a carefully considered plan for moving forward. We are drawing funds from the investment portfolio that is sustainable in perpetuity, that that considers the rising cost of practically everything we make and do, and it allows decent pay salaries to the AAVSO staffers who directly support everything that we do. We are an organization of volunteers that is successful in part because we rely on a paid staff to ensure that things get done reliably and on time. As a result, we are stronger and better off today than we have ever been before. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Richard. Are there any questions for him? Okay. Seeing none, well, thank you, Richard. And we'll go ahead and continue with the rest of the program. And by the way, it was wonderful seeing you.
Yes, bye. I'll stay though.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. All right. So we'll switch over and start sharing the regular slides here. All right. All right. So first off, as we usually do, we honor the members of our organization who have passed in the last few years. So in the last year, Ann Dunn, Paul Hemingway, Carl Cordat, Kent Honeycutt, Charles Morris, and Gerald Pershaw have passed away. Let's honor them with a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next up, Arnie with a reading of the minutes from the 2024 annual meeting.
So how much time do I have? The problem is that Chris, our prior secretary, just took excellent notes, but she also wrote long minutes too. And so I'm going to summarize the minutes as opposed to reading them verbatim. I hope that was okay with people. Chris gave the summary report of the minutes from the 2023 membership meeting, just as I'm doing for the 2024. Bob Stevens gave a treasurer's report summary that showed that we had total liabilities and net assets of about $19 million, which is about $3 million more than we had in the prior year. It's even better this year, as Bob will tell us. There was a question about the cost of internet, which was answered that a third of it goes for the website, a third is for backup, and a third for VFOT. Nancy Morrison, the JAAVSO editor, gave her report. She reminded us that the journal is refereed, fully open access, and free to members to publish in. The election results for the board were revealed. So Tom Macaron was elected, as well as Molly Wakeling and Diego Teixeira. There were proposed bylaws to the Constitution, or to the bylaws, proposed revisions to the bylaws. They were all passed except for item number 4, which concerned paying dues no sooner than 60 days in advance. Brian gave a membership report, of which highlights included the fact that he introduced our new development director, Whitney Armitar, who is also here today. The change of the council was changed from the council to a board, as Richard mentioned earlier. That there are currently at that time 2.3 million stars in VSX, and that he expected an update shortly that would add another 9 million stars from Gaia, and that has actually taken place. The number of exoplanet observers has grown considerably. AV spec has also grown measurably, but the actual membership has been roughly constant. Webinars are now our top education and public outreach activity, reaching over 10,000 people per year. The ambassadors program has been discontinued, but we have included this important topic in the strategic plan. Brian then gave a director's report in which he gave a summary of the strategic goals. I think you'll do that again today. And so I won't go ahead and read those. There's 5 of those. The annual campaign kicked off as of that day. There was a discussion regarding technology, filters, CCD, CMOS detectors, and so on. And the question was raised about the relative percentage of amateur to professional members in the organization. And as far as that's concerned, the latest data that we had was a demographic survey in 2011. And then there were some awards that were given out. The Merit Award went to Gordon Myers. The Alcott Award went to Gary Walker. There were special awards given to Walt Cooney as a member of the Argolander Society, Brad Schaefer for his 50-year membership pin. I wish I had one of those. Elizabeth Wagon for 25 years, or excuse me, for 45 years as a valued employee of the organization. That's twice as long as I've been involved with the organization. And then there were retiring board members that were recognized. Eric Hintz, Dennis Conti, Chris Larson, as I mentioned before, Sarah Austin Willis, and Pat Boyce. And that basically is the minutes of the 2024 meeting.
Next up will be Bob Stevens with the treasurer's report. And Bob, just push the down arrow on the keyboard to advance.
I better start my timer because I tend to drone on about such things. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And I know everybody is caffeine deprived, but I did notice there seems to be one can of Red Bull out in the vending machine outside, but don't everybody rush for it. But for the rest of you, I'll try to have some exciting numbers. So you say tap on it or?
Down arrow.
Well, there is no arrow. The thing I just pushed in, that thing. Okay, all right. Treasurer's report. We got some exciting news to report to everybody, just like we had some exciting news last year. And first of all, this is our first financial statement I'll report upon. It's called a balance sheet for those people who have operated a small business, a statement of financial position for all the rest of us. It's a snapshot in time of the assets that we had and the liabilities that we owed as of a certain date, which is the end of our fiscal year, September 30th. The numbers that we're going to be concerned about is the middle column in red right here. That's the 2025 numbers. The numbers to the right of it are there only for comparative purposes. And the top number that we'll be concerned about is cash, as always. We normally keep about $350,000, $400,000 cash in the bank. It's a liquidity for us. It's our rainy day fund in the common parlance. It's there to not only cover our operating expenses, but in the event of a downturn. The next number that everybody's going to get excited about is our investment portfolio, commonly referred to as the endowment fund, even though that's not a technically accurate term. But as of September, we had $19.6 million in it, which is up over $1 million from the year before. I will also note the fact that as of Wednesday, it went over $20 million. We'll talk about more about the endowment fund at the end of the slides here. I got a couple of slides from Sarah and elsewhere. There's a few other small assets included in there, some current prepaid expenses and a few things, but our assets total up over $20 million. And from that, we subtract our liabilities of $250,000. And that is, back up here. Some payables, credit cards, accrued vacation pay, a few things like that. So the net assets, which is assets less liabilities, is $19.9 million as of the end of the year. So I'm going to now show you this. This is what happened over that 12-month period of time. Now, there's a lot of numbers to be looking at, especially this time of the morning with the lack of caffeine. So we'll concentrate on the important ones. And again, the important ones are the second column from the right. That's the 2025 numbers showing what we brought in the way of income and what we spent in the way of expenses, and the fact that at the bottom we had more income than expenses to the extent of almost $1.2 million. The column to the right, again, is just there for comparative purposes. What drove all of this is the stock market. For those of you who've been looking at your 401ks, you know that things have gone up very, very well over the past 12 months. Will that continue into the future? Who knows? My crystal ball is simply not that good. We also, our expenses are, the biggest expense line is always the personnel expense. That's what we do. We have paid staff to accomplish programs for all of us. And so our personnel expense was $800,000, which is up slightly from the year before for a few reasons. So again, what we can see is that our assets went up by $1.2 million, largely because of what happened in the endowment fund. Not only largely, by design. This is a nonprofit designed to break even. We only spend what we need to, and in most years, the endowment goes up, but not this extremely. So where's our revenues coming from? To fund operations, by and large, the largest portion of the revenues come from a draw from the endowment funds. In this case, it was $890,000, a board authorized slight increase from previous years because we were funding a special program in addition to normal operations. What else comes in? Dues, 9% is about $112,000. Contributions, our annual campaign and other contributions that come in throughout the year, $162,000. Everything else is fairly minuscule, and we have not had many grants from government agencies in the last couple of years, nor are we expecting any in the next few years. Where's our expenses go to, as we say? Here's that pie chart. Again, the personnel expenses are about 2/3 of what we spend. We have contract services. That's our attorney, our auditors, our bookkeeper, our payroll service, and a few other things. That's $125,000, 10% of everything that we spend. Internet costs, which we talked about last year and Arnie just mentioned, $53,000. Meetings, you'll notice the meeting expense is only $56,000. That's the hard cost of the meeting last year in Alabama, and it's down substantially from what it was in prior years where it was over $80,000 typically. Operating expenses, $155,000. About 2/3 of that is the cost of operating the office in Massachusetts. And then there's some other things, insurance and travel expenses and stuff like that. And so that's basically where we spend the money. Now, I want to show with you the same numbers in a different way. We do cost accounting now, where we can now show you the expense by program as opposed to expense by type, which is what this is. So if we look at it by program, we can see that, well, the green slice up there, tools and IT, that's what we have been spending to develop the website, all the various apps and things like that. That's $192,000. Now, that's not just a ruse salary. That's every member of staff who works on these programs, who does troubleshooting, who looks at web pages to make sure that the grammar and the spelling is right, all that stuff. So that cost us all $192,000. G&A, $311,000. That's running the organization. Again, that's about 1/4 of what we spend, just a little bit over, and very typical for nonprofits, by the way. It's amazing when you have employees and business operations, all the things that you have to do to run an organization, and stuff that comes out of left field all the time with that morning email that Brian gets at 8 a.m. that he dreads every single morning of some new problem that he has to deal with. Fundraising costs, that's our development director, plus the tools of fundraising, plus the staff that also works on fundraising, writing letters, calling people, going to meetings and everything like that. So our fundraising raising is, just a bit over 10%, a little bit more than that, and very typical for a nonprofit. Other expenses, member support, marketing, publications, those are all small parts of the pie. But yesterday in one of the meetings, somebody made the comment that it costs us money for every new member we bring in. Think about that statement. And then look at this. Member management and support cost $56,000. That was 1/2 of the dues collected for that one small slice. Volunteer management, $45,000, almost also 1/2. You saw earlier the internet cost was $55,000, again 1/2. All these 1/2s add up to the point where think about the value of membership that you get. We've raised the dues a little bit this year up to $105,000, and you're getting far more than $105,000, not 105,000. 105 is what I'm trying to say. I see Tom laughing back there. Thanks. But you're getting far more value out of that $105 than you're putting in. So this is a great organization from that standpoint. Now, okay, 5 minutes. Sarah sent this along. This is a presentation she made to the board on Friday, talking about the investment portfolio and all the nuts and bolts that goes into it and everything. I just wanted to call attention to a couple things that she brought up, is that when we designed the portfolio, when the investment committee met with the advisors and they told us what we needed to do to provide the cash flow necessary for the organization to provide all these additional services to you, we require a 6.5% rate of return, which is the 4 to 4.5%, 4 to 4.5% distribution that we have, plus an inflation factor. If you were looking at this for your own individual needs, you'd also add taxes on top of that, but we're nonprofit. So we need a 6.5% rate of return on our portfolio. And of course, anybody who looks at the stock market knows that it averages 8 or 9% typically year to year, which it gives us potential for growth. And in some years, like the last 2 years, it's been, 20%, something like that. So not every year is like that. Some years are going to be down years, and they will happen again in the future. So also, she wanted to point out that our portfolio is balanced to 70% equities, 30% fixed income sorts of things, and a few other stuff like that in there. And that was a discussion we had 5 years ago with the investment advisors who determined what our cash needs were and then what was needed to get there. And this was, immortalized with the board of directors signing off on it and in our investment document with them. So that's our mix, and I'll show you a bit more. This is provided by our investment advisors. Every quarter, they tell us what our draw rate is based upon the portfolio. And when they took over, it was just about 5%. It was actually higher than that before they took over. Due to, changes in the market over time, it goes up and down a little bit, but there's a long-term trend line of it going down, and that is quite deliberate in that we were trying to get to a 4% draw rate deliberately over time, and we have, in fact, obtained that and exceeded that. The last little blue line on the end, the board authorized an additional draw beyond the normal draw rate just to fund a special project for fundraising. But excluding that number, we would be under 4% today, and this was before the additional $500,000 run up in the portfolio in the last point over time. So, yes, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go sideways, but over time, the trends have been holding for us. So I think, one more. Okay, these numbers are way, way too small for you to read, but it's just showing how the portfolio is balanced between equities, between fixed, between U.S. versus, small cap, large cap, foreign equities, all that sort of stuff. So these things are looked at very carefully each and every quarter and rebalanced. So at this point in time, we have a couple minutes or so, so we might have a question or two or three. Yeah, yes.
You mentioned that our portfolio is a bit on the aggressive side. Has there been discussion on the board about perhaps reconsidering that 70% equity balance? What's the temperature of the group?
Dave asked, Dave noted that the balance of the portfolio is slightly aggressive, 70-30, whereas some nonprofits are 60-40, and asked if the board has discussed this recently and what the temperature is. Yes, the board discussed it on Friday, and Sarah immediately shot out a email on Friday to the investment advisors for them to come back and discuss it again at the next quarterly meeting. So most nonprofits are either 60-40 or 70-30, and our performance is compared against all of our peers being nonprofits with a portfolio of $50 million or less. And we're constantly in the top quarter of performance. Of, we beat 75% of them out there. Partly that is reason because we're slightly more aggressive. We also know that over the last couple decades or so that fixed incomes have greatly underperformed, and this is one of the reasons we have done so well. And a lot of individuals are actually at a 90-10 ratio. But given where we are, we want to take a look at this again and find out if this is appropriate for us in the near term and medium term going forward, given that a lot of people think we're probably at the high water point of the market for a while and see what we're doing. So we want to reevaluate our risk at that point in time. And yes, we're going to discuss it.
Quick question. What were the total donations?
The question was, what was the total donations? And they were about, okay, I can get that for you real quick. Okay. Total donations were $162,000. Of that, about $115,000 from the annual campaign, and the rest of it was various donations coming in throughout the year.
Thank you.
You mentioned we'd like 6.5% return. How well has in fact AAVSO really done in the last 10 years? Have we in fact done 8 or 9%, which is the global idea, but I'm not believing that's going to happen for the next 10 years.
Yeah. The question was, the needed rate of return is 6.5%. How has our portfolio done over the last 10 years or so? I don't have numbers for you off the top of my head past 5 years, but over the last 5 years, it's been like 11+%. We've been doing much better than that. It's allowed the portfolio to grow, not only to cover inflation, but to allow us to take on additional operations in the future.
I'm wondering how the office is working on.
The question is, how is the office working? Do you want to cover that question later in your presentation, Brian? Okay, Brian will talk about the office in the members meeting.
Internet costs. I have personal interest in those. How well does Amazon Web Services allow us to separate the bill into sections like our web page versus personally, my question is VFON. It's noted that it's 1/3 of those costs. I'm concerned that that's hard time believing that, but
Yeah.
trust what you got. How well do they separate their account?
The question is, does Amazon Web Service spread the bill out between our various services? And the short answer is no. They just tell us how much to pay every month.
So we've made that calculation.
There's a bit more to it than that.
Yeah.
You want me to answer?
Okay, Bert's going to tell the audience and I'll repeat.
So Amazon Web Services kind of breaks this thing into a couple of different buckets. There are machines, like EC2 is what they call them, but they're basically like servers that are running stuff. There is sort of your upload and download costs. And then the final one is storage and backups. So they kind of break it down into 3 buckets. You can get a little bit more fine grained than that, but that's effectively what you get. The way that we have our account set up, you can also break it down by organizational account. So for instance, AAVSO.net is completely separated out. It has its own account. We know the exact numbers for that. VFOT is just a server within our main account. We have some idea of what it costs to run that server because there is a contracted amount that server requires, and there's a contracted amount that the storage on that server requires that we can easily break out. The exact costs we don't know, but we do know what we sort of have for that server and what we paid to basically start that server right now.
So Bert's very long answer was, yes, they give us some delineation by type of upload or download and by server, which allows us to interpolate some of the costs. It's not a straight, perfect answer, but we have an idea. Okay, last question. We're way over.
This one, so when you said each year you rebalance the portfolio, when you have to have a certain amount to be able to sustain your draw. When you have more than that, like in a flush year like this, then you redirect some of those funds into like your stable value or money market account as a hedge against down years.
Okay. The question was when we rebalance the portfolio, which is quarterly, and we have great up years, do we move some of the money aside to more stable investments? So the short answer is no. We have an investment policy signed off by the board that says it will be in these percentages always, and we move it towards those. And yes, one of the categories is cash because we have a quarterly cash need. And at the start of each quarter, they always move enough out to make sure that there's enough to cover our monthly draw. With that, I will give the stage back.
All right. Up next is Nancy Morrison with the JAAVSO report. And so Nancy, I'll go ahead and send you a request to become a presenter. If I can find her in the list here, there you go. So Nancy, if you click the accept button, it'll close Zoom and reopen Zoom for you really quick. There she went. So she'll be back here in a second. Okay, Nancy, I see you're back in. So if you could just unmute yourself. Okay, so if you could say something, Nancy, we can't hear you quite yet.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go. And did you want to present the slides on your side, or would you like me to display them and advance them here?
Oh, I could present them, I
Okay,
believe. Just to, do I have a share button? Let me see
yeah,
here.
should be down at the bottom of the screen.
I have a share button. Let me make sure I have a screen to share. Yeah, there it is. Okay. I guess I'm going to have to do it this way. Okay, I don't have this set up properly, so would you go ahead and show my slides, please?
Yep, I'll show them, and then I'll just hang out up here and just let me know when you want to advance to the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
And back up here. There's the end of Bob's. So, okay. I'll just let me know when you want to go to the next slide.
Oh, next slide, please. Okay, just in case this journal needs an introduction, here it is. This has already been mentioned. AAVSO members may publish for free. We are fully open access to the entire astronomical community. We publish, most of our content is results of variable star research, photometry, spectroscopy, and data mining. We have a few papers on observing techniques, including software and instrumentation. We publish on solar astronomy, a few papers on statistical analysis and modeling, education and public outreach as relevant to variable stars, and history related to variable star studies. This year we published not a history article per se, but an autobiographical article, and that has been done a few times in the past. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so here's an update on the refereed articles by topic. The 2025 number includes articles accepted as of the day I prepared the slide, which was in the middle of October. A few more have been published since then, and we may be having a few more by the end of the year. The left-hand bar, the dark blue, is eclipsing binaries. You can see there's been a drop in that content this year. That's irregular, but more or less an ongoing trend. It's almost the case now that our largest category is other, which is the dark brown bar on the right. And it's possible that I should break that down further. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here's the update on our authors and referees. The number of papers is down, so the number of authors is down too, but also we don't have the large number of students involved in the past as much as we have before. The pool of referees keeps growing, and I'm very grateful for that. Okay, next slide. Here's the breakdown by the part of the population that our first or corresponding authors come from. There's a roughly even breakdown, which has more or less been true in the past on the average between amateur and professional authors. And this year we had a few, looks like, in fact, from the Graph 1 paper authored by a high school student. There's been more of those in the past. Okay, next one, please. Okay, last year, for the first time, I presented citation analysis. This refers to the number of times that each paper has been referred to by journal volume and page number by other authors. This is easily found in the National Astrophysics Data System, for which I give the link there. And one thing I do, which is a little bit of extra labor, but well worth it, I think, is to exclude citations of authors to their own papers, which is certainly a valid thing to do, but it's not a measure of the reception of our journal in the community. When other authors cite our journal, that shows that they're interested in it, they're interested in the material, and we're attracting the notice of the community, which is something that I think we want to do. Next one, please. Okay, so here's the citation analysis. And I'm sorry to say that just this morning, I noticed a serious error in this graph, which I will now explain. Fortunately, it's easy to explain. And that is, you can see in the top that volume 51, year 2023, has been duplicated. And so what the bars are is citations by year of citations along the x-axis, and now I've got the citations per average paper, citations divided by total paper published, which tries to take into account the rather large variation in the number of papers published from year to year. So each colored bar within the vertical bar represents one volume according to the color key in the top. Now this error with respect to volume 51, which simply results from my having stupidly duplicated a column in a spreadsheet, only affects the citations made in years 2024 and 25, of course, but it means that this gray bar and this brown bar refer to the same data. And so what that also means is that these last two columns should be lowered by about this amount. So this one would be here, and this would be down here. And of course, that still leaves us with a rather dramatic increases in citations in 2024 and 2025. And this is only half of 2025 that's shown here. Why would this be? First of all, as I pointed out last year, the journal became open access in about 2019 or 2020. And so people generally don't cite papers that they haven't read, or at least they shouldn't. So that means that citations usually start to peak or rise, or at least peak 2 to 4 years after the paper is published. So it would make sense that citations to 2020 would have risen fairly dramatically in 2022. And since this is citations per paper, the fact that there was a large number of papers published in 2020 is no longer included in the graph. The fact that the citations per paper, even without the error being made, is dramatically larger in 2024 and 2025. I can't explain very well because there are many factors which might cause people to cite a paper, and it's never clear which one is involved. One hopes that the quality of the papers is higher. It's quite possible that that the AAVSO and our journal along with it have increased prominence in the community thanks to the excellent work of our leadership. So I think my last slide, next, please. Thank you to everyone involved. As usual, AAVSO staff who do a fantastic job, particularly getting the issue together and published at the end of the year, which is coming up. Dr. Kloppenborg and the board of directors for their support. Readers and authors, of course, we could not exist without you. And the people who provide peer review for our articles, who are anonymous and unpaid and therefore get no public credit. If you are in this audience, thank you very much. You know who you are. And I'm open for questions.
All right, so Nancy, I'll summarize and relay questions from the audience.
I can usually hear pretty well, although if I ask you to, you might want to repeat.
Okay, all right, I'll just stand aside. So any questions for Nancy? Tom, we really need to put you on the ends of the tables with as many questions as you asked. Oh, I need the exercise. Okay, Ken's up first.
Nancy, did in fact your slide show that the number of articles in the journal has decreased by over a factor of half?
Yes, I'm sorry to say it's been decreasing. I don't have good explanations for that, although I can offer a couple of possibilities. Our submissions are down this year. They were also down last year. There's also some backlog. There's quite a few papers in progress, and some of the numbers this year may come up, as I mentioned. There are two reasons for the backlog. Well, maybe one reason for the backlog. I do have trouble sometimes getting authors to revise papers. I get trouble getting referees to respond to requests. Eventually, they do respond, and I have been having trouble with personal productivity for two reasons, and I think both of those reasons are in progress of being solved.
Pardon me. Does the board think that's a significant issue? Is there some thought on how to help? I would hope we wouldn't keep going down.
Yeah, so Ken, we actually we haven't investigated that particular issue regarding the change in citations, or sorry, the number of papers that have been going into the journal. If you look at kind of the long-term trends over the last decade, things kind of go up and down. At times we're low, at times we're high, and so we rely on Nancy's expertise. And if Nancy, if you become, oh sorry, yeah, so if Nancy, if you become concerned regarding the number of papers that are coming in, please feel free to let us know, and we can devote some high-level resources to it.
Okay, I am hopeful that the current minimum is a local minimum and that the numbers will go back up.
Nancy, for the citation analysis, have you checked if papers that have been submitted to the preprint servers get cited more often than papers that haven't been? I suspect that's the case, and are authors encouraged to submit the paper to the preprint server, or do they have to kind of know that they should do that on their own?
The answer to the second question is that we don't formally encourage authors to submit to the preprint server, but I certainly would informally recommend that. Usually, the preprint server recommends that you submit a paper that has already been accepted for publication. And in our case, the time between acceptance and publication is pretty short, usually. On the other hand, there's value in having the paper in the preprint server, even if there's only a short time between submission to the preprint server and publication. And so I would encourage people to do that. One reason is that many researchers do their literature search primarily on the archive preprint server. And so if you want your paper to be found and cited, it's probably a good thing to do. In the answer to your first question, I thought about that this morning, as a matter of fact, whether papers in the archive are more likely to get cited. But I haven't investigated that particular question, but it would be a good one to investigate, and I will.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Go ahead.
A couple of years ago, tried to put something on preprints or the archive, and I wasn't affiliated with any university, and it wasn't allowed, it didn't seem. So I think it might be difficult for a lot of our members to do that.
Yes, I'm aware that there are some criteria that have to be met, but I'm not familiar in detail with what they are. Brian, what would your reaction be if people were to cite their affiliation as AAVSO for that purpose?
Yeah, we actually do have a lot of folks that identify as being a member of the AVSO for professional affiliations, going to conferences, things along that line. And so usually it is just send us an email, and if they require proof, we'll reply back with an email saying, yeah, this guy's cool or this gal's cool. So I think that'd be fine. The question is whether or not Archive would actually accept that. So we might have to have a conversation with them. So Mark, I would say if that problem persists, let us know and we can talk to find out what we can do. And like Bob Stevens, do you have an issue with that with folks with SAS? Because I guess you guys do your proceedings and you don't post them to Archive, right?
Dave succeeded in uploading the whole proceeding, but I don't know what the mechanism is.
Okay, all right. Okay, so the SAS goes to ADS, but not to Archive. Okay, all right. Okay, Elizabeth has, turn it on, count to 3, and it'll work over there, Elizabeth. And it should slide, okay.
Many of our observers who are co-authors on papers, every few weeks we get emails asking, can you please contact these observers and let them know I want them to be a co-author. And most of them list their affiliation as AAVSO, and those papers are published in all of the journals. They're on Archive, they're ADS, they're everywhere. So AAVSO is a recognized professional affiliation.
Okay, that's very good. All right, Bert, do you have one more thing? Okay, yeah. I guess we have a couple questions online and nobody's monitoring that. So, Bert, if you could relay a couple of those questions, and then if I could get a board member to volunteer to log in and just serve as a surrogate in the room, it'd be any. Bruce, you'll do that. Okay, so Bert will get you online as a panelist, or once you log in, I can upgrade you to a panelist. Go ahead, Bert.
So one of them a while ago, and I don't really know what it refers to. It says, is the AAVSO subject to the 1/3 public support rule, and how does the endowment fit in?
Yes, and we're right along that edge.
And the second one was for Nancy. So I think she can probably answer it in the chat, but it says, could you look through the annual meeting proceedings and see whether any would make good JAAVSO papers? If so, I would encourage these others to submit to JAAVSO.
Thank you
and-
for, thank you for that. And if you'd like, I would, I'd be happy to look that over and email the authors.
Okay, any other questions, Bert?
So the last one is, can we send papers to Nancy without formatting them to see if they are appropriate for the journal? Posed by Chris.
Oh, thank you for that question, which I can hear. And I actually meant to mention something about that. I do get, people do email me paper ideas in various forms. They can be summaries, they can be outlines, and yes, I do respond to those and make judgments and suggestions about suitability for publication. So you're welcome to do that.
And I've actually done that about a couple of my papers too, so nobody feel bad. So, all right, everybody, let's thank Nancy one more time. And Nancy, if you could just mute your microphone and shut off your camera. But you're welcome to stay as a panelist, or you can leave and come back in, your choice. All right, so next up we have the election results, and Walt will announce those.
Thanks, Brian. Can you guys hear me okay? Online okay? Okay, great. We have our election results for the board. First thing I'd like to do, though, is thank the nominating committee. They did a lot of work, a great slate of candidates, which is seen in the closeness of the election results, actually. And so I'd like to thank Bill Dillon and Gordon Myers, sorry, and Bob Buckheim for the great work they did several months, talking to a lot of folks, trying to find capable candidates who would like to take on this responsibility. And we had a slate of 6 folks, and the way it's structured is there are 9 elected board members, 3 roll off, and a new class rolls on every year. And so it's a 3-year term. And so the results are re-elected for a second term, Peter Bilo and Dipankar Mitra. And our new board member stepping on is Rick Diz. Congratulations to all. And so we'll be in touch. Okay. We had another election, and that was the election for the officers of the board. And that happened Friday at the board meeting. And so your new officers starting this afternoon, a little later, I'll be the incoming president. And first vice president is Mark Munkasey. Mark? Okay. Second vice president, Bruce McMath. And continuing secretary, Arnie Hendon. And Bob Stevens as treasurer. Okay, well, thank you very much. And so next up in our agenda is a report of the membership by Brian.
All right, so before I get started, I'd just like to take a moment to answer Ken's question that he asked during Bob Stevens' treasurer's report. Ken, you're wondering how the office is working out on Alewife Brook Parkway. It's actually working out reasonably well. However, as you know, the number of staff members there has continued to dwindle over the last few years. With Elizabeth's retirement at the end of this calendar year, we will have 1 full-time person and 1 part-time person occupying an office area for 6. So we surveyed the staff, and we talked with the board, we talked with real estate agents, and at our board meeting yesterday, the decision was made to actually sublet the last year of our 5-year lease within the Alewife Brook Parkway, and we'll actually move to be purely a virtual remote working organization. I will say that it's actually worked out incredibly well. For me, all my employees are remote because I live in Colorado Springs and I only commute up to the office maybe once or twice a year. Our team, they've been working hybrid, 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, no loss of productivity. And I think Bert could attest that he's a lot happier not having to drive back and forth. Yeah, okay, he shakes his head yes. We'll begin that process probably around June 1st. We'll be fully out of the office. So does that answer your question, Ken? Okay, terrific. All right, so next up is the membership report. So I just kind of like a high-level summary of what I'll be discussing today. I'll cover the topics of the community as AAVS as a whole, our leadership, how our members and observers and users of the AAVSO's products and services are basically participating, summarize our overall scientific impact with the exception of the journal, which Nancy just did a moment ago, and then talk about our education and public outreach activities. But before that, I'm going to abuse my executive director privileges and just say that I dug into the archive and I asked myself, when was the last time we were up here? And as far as I can tell, the last time AAVSO had a physical presence in the Pacific Northwest, a substantial one, was in 2007, where Tom Crawford and Richard Berry went to the Astronomical League convention. I think, Arnie, we were also at the AAS meeting in like 2010, but I can't remember if we had a booth. I couldn't find any photos of that. But in terms of like an actual annual meeting, the last time we were here was actually in Seattle, Washington in 1985. And you might recognize a few people in the photos. For example, here is Clint Ford. There is Janet Maddie. And then in terms of other folks, I don't think anybody here was there. So, you know, it's, oh, you were there, Paula? Where you? Are you? Oh, Paula was a host. Okay. And you're not listed in the photo. So we'll have to update this somehow so we can get you added, not in picture or something. Yeah, Photoshop, yeah, color picture of Paula in a 1985 picture. So yeah, so it's wonderful to be back in the Pacific Northwest. All right, so just talking about our current board of directors. So you just heard Walt announce what our new board is looking like, but these are the people that were serving as the board for the last year. Richard Berry as the president, Walt is the first VP, Mark as the second VP, Arnie was the treasurer, Arnie was the secretary, Bob was the treasurer, and I was serving as the executive director. The class of 2025, which just rolled off, consisted of Peter Bilo, Aaron Slisky, and Dipankar. The class of 2026, there is a vacant position, which Walt will yield his presidential powers and fill via appointment sometime later this year. And then the class of 2027 was just announced last year. So I'd like to just take a moment, like the board works really hard behind the scenes, and I just like to thank them for all the hard work that they do over the year. Next up is the staff. So the staff has remained basically unchanged from last year. So Kathy Spirer continues to serve as our operations manager. Elizabeth Wagon, Bert Pablo, Aru Boop, Whitney Armater, Tim Leister, and Sebastian Otero. Sebastian's actually a contractor, but we'll lump him here on this slide. They've performed incredibly well over the last year, and it's been a privilege working with them over the last year as well. So let's please give the staff a round of applause to thank them for their hard work. And I unfortunately can't list everybody's name who's actually been a volunteer. According to our records, we have about 200 people that volunteer for the AAVSO. That's not the board, and it's not the staff working extra hours. But just kind of generically speaking, we have a variety of board committees, operating committees, the Smart Telescope Working Group, software developers, several of which are here in the room, science support, and education and public outreach support as well. So I just ask if you've worked on any of these groups or you've supported the AAVSO in a volunteer activity, if you could please stand and be recognized for the work that you've done. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so now over to numbers. So in terms of membership trends, this is how the AAVSO has evolved over the last year, the last 10 years in terms of its membership. You might notice that there was kind of a bump here between 2019 and 2022. I've seen this actually in membership statistics from other nonprofit organizations, and apparently there was some global event that happened at that time, which everybody is correlating against. So more or less that was because everybody was locked indoors during the COVID pandemic. But kind of if you just cut off the tops here, our membership trends, we've actually been fairly steady, hanging at about 1,100 dues-paying members for about the last 7 to 8 years. Now, in terms of turnover, we've spent some time analyzing that information, and with any given year, we have about 20% of our people leave and 20% of our people come in as new. And some folks have looked at that in past years, and they've said that's a really big problem. We need to go and spend lots of resources in order to solve that. However, every nonprofit organization that I've looked at and reviewed, there's nice books that summarize like volunteer management and member management within nonprofits. 20% is healthy. So most organizations see something more like 25% turnover. So that 20% churn that we have is actually perfectly acceptable, and it's a sign that we actually have a healthier than average nonprofit organization. In terms of meetings that we attended, either I or various members of the AAVSO went down, of course, to the 113th annual meeting that we had down in Huntsville. We had physical presence at both NEAF and NEAC up in Suffern, New York, where we had a booth for the first time, I think since 2008, maybe. It was the last time we had a physical booth there. We had over 500 people stop by the booth and say hello. Lots of people that were friends of the AAVSO or had been involved in the past. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of traction out of that. We also presented a total of 6 Pro-Am collaboration talks. 3 of them were at NEAF proper, and 3 of them were at the NEAC conference that followed NEAF. So lots of good presentations there. We also presented at 2 separate workshops at the Society for Astronomical Sciences meeting. Thank you again for Bob and John Hoot, wherever you are. Thank you for inviting us in. One of them was a workshop that specifically was focusing on smart telescopes. So it was nice to, talk about the work that Mark Von Casey and the rest of the Smart Telescope Working Group have been doing. Lastly, we also had a physical presence at Stellafane in Springfield, Vermont. So that's we have had a presence there for the last several years. This was my first time actually going up to Stellafane. It was a lot of fun, I will say, a really great group of people. But we presented 2 different lectures at the Harkness House lecture series and 2 Pro-Am talks within their Pro-Am sessions. We netted, I think it was 2 or 3 new solar observers out of that. Unfortunately, nobody doing photometry, but solar observers are useful to have as well. This is a chart that I think everybody likes to take a look at, and this is the second year that I've actually broken it down by all of the different databases. So these charts here show the observers and their areas of interest effectively. On the left-hand side is the total number of observers as a function of year, and on the right-hand side, it's the same data, but expressed in fractional percentages of our observers that we have. And blue is folks that contribute to the AID. Orange is people that contribute to AVSpec. Gray is folks that contribute to the exoplanet database. And the orange color, because that's the color of the sun, is of course solar. So as you can see, the AID has remained relatively steady at around 800 or so people contributing to that database over the last decade. However, we've actually seen an incredibly large growth in the number of people that are contributing to the exoplanet database, where we now have about 300 people there that are contributing. And I will note that with the exception of the generous activities that Dennis Conti is performing, we don't have any staff that supports the exoplanet database. All of these contributions that we're getting are actually through the NASA JPL Exoplanet Watch program. And the last time I spoke with our colleagues that run that program, they weren't sure if they were going to have any funding moving into next year. And so if Exoplanet Watch does not receive any funding, I'll probably be knocking on some people's doors, because we're going to need to pick up the slack to keep those people involved in that type of science activity. Just in case you're curious about the high-level breakdown, about 60% of our observers are contributing photometry to the AID, and about 30% are to ExoDB, and then the other 2 are 3% and 6% for solar and spectra, respectively. In terms of our contribution to science, the data contributions for all of the different databases have continued to grow, as you might expect. So for the AID, we saw 13.7% year-over-year growth. For stellar spectroscopy, the AV spec is now up to 17,600 spectra, which is a 13.6 year-over-year growth. And I will note that I originally thought I did something wrong because they were so close to each other in terms of numbers, but that is indeed correct. The exoplanet photometry database grew by a whopping 54%. And that really says to you that, we're not just a photometric organization looking at stars. Lots of people are really interested in looking at exoplanets. And we should start thinking, in my opinion, as spending a little bit more time focusing on exoplanets in the near future. And of course, the solar observations, we're now up to 291,000 observations with a 3% growth. I believe Chris would tell you all that it's been an unusually cloudy and smoky year, and so it's not as large as what it has been in past years. The variable star index. Now, this is really awesome. So as you heard from Arnie's report at the beginning, we knew about 2.2 million variable stars at the beginning of last year. However, some incredibly heroic work done by a couple of individuals I'll discuss a little bit later on today. They increased the total number of known variable stars up to about 10.2 million in VSX, mostly by the ingestion of Gaia DR3 data for where they're tagging stars. Now, I will note that a lot of these stars are actually very poorly sampled. So we know that they vary, but we don't know what they are. And so they'll often have like 5 different categories. So if anybody wants to go out and just start looking at any of these Gaia stars, first off, make sure that you can observe them clearly and separate them within your telescope. Sebastian tends to get angry when you request new AUIDs for stars that are basically right on top of each other. But these would be great projects for students. There's like another 8 million stars here that you could be the only person looking at it, observing it, and trying to figure out what type of variability it actually is. And just one other note, about 26% of our overall science impact comes from VSX. So that's a statistic back from 2022, but I don't expect that it's really changed considerably in the last couple of years. Now, if you're curious about how your observations are helping professional astronomers, here's an idea of the total number of alert notices and observing campaigns that we've had in the last decade, as well as citations of AAVSO's data products or services in the literature over the same amount of time. One thing that I have noticed is that our number of campaigns has been slowly decreasing. This is the lowest year in terms of campaigns that we've had in the last several years, although it will tick up a little bit because it's on a calendar year basis. So we'll have a few more come in at the end of the year, but we're not seeing as much engagement from professional astronomers asking for help as what we have in the past. I'm happy to report that this year, as part of our strategic goals, I'm going to be out knocking on people's doors. So I really hope that we'll see that come up over the next couple of years. And in terms of the citation count, so these are in blue peer-reviewed articles. In orange here, these are non-peer-reviewed articles. So this would be something like on the archive or a poster or something that cites AAVSO in one way or another. It's just AAVSO search in the full text. This is on a calendar year basis. And so despite the fact that it looks like there's a little bit of a drop-off between 2024 and 2025, this will come back up and we'll be online for about our average of 260 peer-reviewed publications per year. One thing I'd like to say is Hubble has about 88 per year. So we're doing pretty good for an organization with only a $1 million per year budget. And if you're curious about how the education and public outreach activities of the AAVSO impact the broader community, here's some more statistics here about mentor requests in the upper left-hand quarter. In the bottom are our webinars that we offer, and on the right-hand side are choice participants. This year, Arnie offered an excellent course on CCD photometry, CCD and CMOS photometry, which really led to a substantial number of individuals who were actually taking our choice courses. In terms of mentor requests, it's kind of stable with previous years. If you are a mentor, thank you very much for the time that you spend. Everybody really enjoys the kind advice and support that you give them when they're first new to photometry. In terms of webinar views, this is a little interesting because our YouTube views and our webinar attendance have continued to trend down over the last couple of years. I'll be watching that over the month of November, and we may or may not choose to continue our webinars in the format that they're currently offered. If you look at like the viewership statistics, we have lots of people watch the webinar out to about 30 seconds and then they disappear. That's typical, but we also offer like 1 hour long webinars. And so we might need to change our format a little bit to shorten that up a little bit to maybe get people to have longer retention within the webinars themselves. But they still are continuing to be our #1 education and public outreach activity. So in case y'all are wondering where we'll be going next year, I'm happy to report that we'll be having our annual meeting in beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico. The specific dates we have to negotiate still with the hotel, but the board did select to remain in person for next year. Now, in order to make these in-person meetings possible, as I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting yesterday, we do rely on a large number of volunteers. And so if you'd be willing to serve on the science meeting organizing committee, or perhaps the abstract committee, or even help us just set up and manage things within the room, please let us know, because it really does help control the costs that are associated with these and make it so that the AAVSO can continue to afford to put on in-person events. So in conclusion, I would like to say that our membership is actually pretty steady. Our scientific impact, our number of observers grew by about 13%. Our databases have grown between 3 to 54%. We're on track for about 250, 260 peer-reviewed publications. So everything is looking really good in that world. In terms of education and public outreach, we had 18 new mentees in 2025. Nearly 200 people took choice courses, which is a record for the last couple of years. And we have reached over 5,000 people directly in our webinars this year. So I'll go ahead and take any questions about the membership meeting, or the member portion of the meeting. No questions. Okay, Paula?
Yeah, I was wondering if VSX is prepared for the onslaught from LSST. I heard at one of the Zoom meetings I participated in that someone mentioned your name to administer the AAVSO database for the handling the number of variable stars.
Oh, that's news to me. So so for those of you that are online, Paula mentioned that I did have a conversation with the LSST group. I suggested to them that they should probably look at VSX to find out what known variable stars are already out there, because it remains the most comprehensive database of variable stars. What Paula pointed out is apparently AAVSO also got volunteered to accept the data or new variable stars from VSX. I didn't say that, so I'll have to go back and talk with them a little bit about that. Is VSX ready to handle the onslaught that comes from LSST? No. But I'm happy to report that we are presently working on a second generation of VSX. Actually, a comment about VSX in general. You might recall earlier this year, there was about a 2-week period where our website was almost completely unusable. That is actually due to that importing of data into VSX, because almost all of our services use VSX and they query the database. And it turned out that there were a lot of performance issues that were associated with just the structure of the tables and also with the queries themselves. I and Aru and Bert, we spent about 2 weeks just digging into VSX and fixing all of these little performance issues as we encountered them. But to go from 10 million stars to 20 million stars, we'll have to take some slightly different approaches to how we manage VSX. So, Gary.
Yeah, you mentioned the strategic plan. Is there a place that folks can go and watch a video or read a presentation on that for the members?
Yeah, so to echo Richard's comments, and I'm going to apologize in advance, we have done an incredibly bad job about communicating the specifics of the strategic plan, not only to the outside organization, but also internal to the AAVSO as well. We need to spend a lot more time just discussing the strategic plan, talk about what our goals are. We do have like a nice plan that lays out the next 5 years worth of activities, to some high level. And it's like costed out against the resources that we have available. And we check it on a quarterly basis and we talk about it, but it's effectively stoplight charts that go up to the board. The staff and I go and we look at it, on a quarterly basis to plan the activities that we're doing, but we haven't really communicated out to the audience. So at present, the best place to go to learn about what our strategic plan is actually the membership meeting discussion from the 113th annual meeting, where Richard and I discussed it in detail. However, we're going to try to rectify this communication problem that we've had and, produce like some documents that we can put out on the website, maybe some videos and some other promotional material. Mark. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. So Mark just reminded me that you're more than welcome to seek out members of the board during lunchtime to ask questions about the strategic plan, or feel free to talk with any of us, and we'll try to answer your questions. Okay. Any other questions on the membership meeting? If not, you get another 10 minutes of Ryan here to talk about the director's report. And this is specifically talking about the overall performance of the strategic plan. So just a bottom line up front, I think that we actually made really good progress on achieving our goals in the 2025 strategic plan, but we do need some help in some areas, and I'll elaborate on those in detail. And then in terms of 2026, I think it's shaping up to be a relatively exciting year. So our first strategic goal was to feature high science value programs, and the specific activities that we indicated we would like to implement for 2025 was to create some small research teams, restructure the sections into SIGs, shift to project-driven activities, and dramatically improve VSX. In terms of the small research team, we got about half of the teams that we wanted to have up and running. So Bert and I were going to be running 2 small research teams. So these are members of the AAVSO. It's only an AAVSO member benefit that you can participate in these. We were only able to get 2 of them started, mostly because of a lot of technology issues that we had to deal with the website. That ended up being about 3.5, 4 months behind schedule, and I'll elaborate on that on a different slide. For the restructuring the sections and the SIGs, 5 of them are now holding monthly meetings. 7 of them are producing some kind of a deliverable or report, or something that we can look at and we can say that they're working towards some achievable goal, as opposed to kind of just meeting or just like producing data and putting it into the database. They're going for a publication, which was one of those restructuring activities that we wanted them to do. And then I'm happy to report that Dipankar is presently leading a special interest group that specifically focuses on polarimetry. So we're exploring kind of the newer frontiers of science there. For the project-driven activities, during the stakeholders meeting, after the member meeting, we're going to be talking about AAVSO's advice and how we'd like to react to sky surveys. We have guidance that I presented at the SAS meeting, and actually just last weekend I presented at the BAA meeting to discuss where we're going, and this will be the first time that I'll present it here to the members, but I need your feedback on that, basically. And then in terms of improving VSX, this is a 2005 era PHP application written in a framework that hasn't been supported since 2006 or 2007. And Leo and Alex have kindly volunteered to help us get these things figured out. We've actually documented the software. We found a significant number of performance improvements, and Leo and Alex, actually, Leo, I think you said that you guys have a beta version of VSX 2.0 already running. So we're making pretty good progress there. Next up is teach people to become skilled observers. We had 3 specific goals here, one of which was to develop asynchronous learning materials. So our objective for this year was basically to document what we think people need to learn in order to become skilled observers or to contribute to science through the creation of papers. Bert and I, through interactions with people, have been documenting things, and we have a list of items that we believe that the educators should be working on when they come on staff here at the beginning of the next year. Bert and I also took up the data validation and feedback activity out of the AVSpec program after Lauren left the staff. And we have a draft of a series of improvements that we want to make to AVSpec to make it so that not only can the system do some of the manual work that we're doing to automatically validate or provide feedback on spectra, much like the new photometry application, when you submit data and something sits about 5 sigma out, you get a red tab that you need to check. We'll do something similar with spectroscopy so that we don't have to have a human in the loop all the time. But we also want to transition AVSpec over to a community-driven moderation model where, the staff trains some of the observers to be able to go look at spectra and make judgment calls so that the staff and the moderators can work together to lessen the load. On average, Bert, I think we have somewhere around 150 spectra per week that we check out, and we have to look at every single one manually, look for wavelength calibration, validate some other things. And so it'll be nice to get that off our shoulders. Occasionally, the number of spectra hits 550 per week, which is a little bit of work for us to do. Next up is a goal where oh, by the way, I'm a millennial, so I'm allowed to communicate using emojis, right? So I forgot about that. So the next one, I think this is a place where we actually could really use your help. So we have two strategic goals that are focusing on cultivating our membership, one of which is to encourage broader participation among women, and the other one is to engage more folks in AAVSO's programs and services. And so we've had a series of recruitment efforts that either I or the board have attempted to do to bring in women into leadership positions. They just haven't worked. And I think we need some help to try to rethink our approach with regard to this. So if anybody's interested in helping us out in this regard, give us some outside eyes on what we've tried to do. Please, contact me or just send an email to avso@avso.org, and we'll get you on the line to chat. But it's not been very successful in my opinion. The next of which is to engage more young people in AAVSO activities. So we wanted to have this project-driven research to basically help maybe get students involved. So identify some projects that are kind of bite-sized and reasonable for students to produce. Unfortunately, a lot of those projects we just haven't had time to produce because of our tech goals that we were working on. We did investigate whether or not the Gaposchkin, the Mayall, and the Maddie funds could be used to fund scholarships. And this was about a month worth of digging into archives and finding old artifacts of how we communicated about various fundraising campaigns back in the 1950s. And it appears that only the Gaposchkin fund could actually be used for funding scholarships. But unfortunately, that fund only has $10,000 to $15,000, and at a 4% level draw, that's like $600 or something like that, which is not really enough money to make a scholarship. And so if anybody would be willing to make a contribution to boost that up to say like $20,000 or $25,000, we could turn that into a $1,000 per year program. And then we could have an active scholarship program honoring Cecilia Payne Gaposchkin, who was, of course, the person who determined that stars were made out of hydrogen and helium. So she is somebody that we really want to honor. And I think it would be really cool to honor students in that way. But we actually can use part-time workers effectively, so potentially students, postdocs, or even faculty in various conditions from the Maddie and the Mayall Fund. Next up is the strong tech-based goals. And I will say that it's been a painful path, but we really knocked it out of the park. So as I mentioned that we had like a 2-week period where basically the whole AAVSO website was almost completely unresponsive. At times it was down. But before that, even going to www.aavso.org or trying to use our apps, they might take 10 to 30 seconds to load. In the risk of angering Murphy, I would encourage you to like open up a browser to apps.aavso.org. It'll be there like that. And so we've made significant improvements to the underlying infrastructure. I know that many of you haven't seen a lot of visual changes in the website, but what's actually running under the hood is significantly improved over where it was from several years ago. So I think we're finally in a state that we can start to move fast and move in different directions. So Nolly, we've been working on the website migration, and there's kind of a preview in the upper right-hand corner of what the new website will look like. We're planning on deploying that near the end of this calendar year. We've adopted a new constituent relationship management platform, which allows Whitney, our fundraiser, to actually do her job very effectively. Our old database that we had for our constituents, we couldn't even answer simple questions like how many dollars has somebody donated without writing custom code. And here she can actually write her own custom queries. And it's a standard tool that the fundraising community actually uses. Next up, we're presently working on replacing the solar observing application. You can see that here behind the smiley face. So we will be able to drop supporting a Java application that's we don't really have the relevant expertise to maintain, and instead it'll be a web-based application. So it's helping reduce the overall, inhomogeneities that exist within our tech stack. We've added some metrics to our core application so we actually understand a little bit better how often they're getting used, which was a question that we couldn't answer directly before. And then a series of bug fixes and improvements, one of which was actually putting the AAVSO services behind a web access firewall, which protects our services from bots. At one point, we had something like 150 hits per second against the VSX by bots, which was actually what was dragging our website down because they were causing queries, basically downloading the whole AID for every single star and just slurping it into AI models, which you know, the photometric data probably doesn't make too much sense for them to actually be ingesting. And the last goal here, which is to become highly visible within the world of astronomy, we have 3 goals that we are intending to accomplish this year, which include developing an application to capture our publication impact. I have a series of scripts that I can run on my computer that'll go out and grab data from the ADS, produce graphs, and not by like charts that we see, but like graph analytic graphs, so you can see how people are connected. So we can understand, like, we have researchers here that they focus on nova. We have researchers here that focus on eclipsing binaries. So we were able to segment them a little bit and looked and find out, you know, if there's one researcher that does a lot of research on eclipsing binaries, we can find their friend. And so now we can go out and we can start contacting them. So we have a much better idea of who's using our who's citing AAVSO data's products and services. So it's scripted, but it's not in any kind of an operationalized form. It's just, you know, Python stuff on my computer. For the Smart Telescope application, you heard Mark yesterday talked about this new data exchange format and a variety of tools to analyze the data there. So I won't belabor that anymore, but the web app is coming relatively soon to be able to accept those things. And unfortunately, with outreach to astronomy clubs, we just didn't have enough time from the staff side to get the education and public outreach started until really late in this year. And so they're up and running, but kind of behind the power curve. Now for next year, those same goals, I'll kind of just leave these 4 up here to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing in the different area. And just to kind of put it back on time, I guess I'll just take questions after a second. So with the high science value programs, we're going to try to get to those 4 small research teams. So look forward to some announcements from me and Bert. I'm hoping that VSX could be replaced sometime in this next calendar year, and we'll have a nice, shiny, and fast application that will integrate with the rest of our services. For teaching people to become still observers, we're going to have that informal educator hired. We've already put out an advertisement. We've received over 150 different applications and have started to pare them down. We'll start interviewing probably around November 15th. The application period is open until November 30th, so we'll probably make an offer in early December. So they should be on staff come January 1st or thereabouts. In terms of cultivating our membership, we're still going to try to build a new leadership recruitment pipeline. That's one of the things that Richard Berry has really been pushing on. And Bill, I think you can attest as being the chair of the nominating committee. You had a really hard job because you basically started from scratch. And so we're going to see if the board can help you by saying, you know, we've been out talking with these people about potentially becoming part of the AAVSO's board. Here's a list of people that you might consider. Without necessarily, you know, saying you have to take these people, right? It's pursuant to our bylaws. And then in terms of our tech base, there's still a little bit of question about where we want to go because of some like APAS DR11 is coming along. So we're not certain if we're going to replace the VSD application or the sequence generator first, but one of those 2 things will probably come up relatively early within this year. And we're going to continue to add some metrics to our core applications. Now, one thing that isn't listed on here is VPHOT, for example, or the light curve generator. The VPHOT is actually volunteer managed and volunteer operated. And thank you very much to George Silvis and Guy and Luca, who have been keeping that software up and running. Given issues that we've had with it recently, we may have to devote some staff time to that. Unfortunately, Bert and Aru, they've never programmed in ASP.NET, and I've done that before. And so it would take us quite a long time to come up to speed. So we're hoping that our volunteers will figure out what the problem is and be able to come up with a solution. If not, we'll try to pull in some potentially outside resources to help us there. Okay, so with that, I'll take questions. That'd be fine. Because that way folks online can hear us too. And Bert, if you could watch for questions online.
Hard question. VSX. It's certainly growing with leaps and bounds. From the user's point of view, like myself, that has some issues, put it that way. Most of the stars, I would say the majority, are like amplitude of 0.03 or less. Not practical or appropriate for most of our observers to work on. I think there are probably, correct me from you guys out there who use photography programs, VFOT and FRANSO,
Mhm.
probably the only two that I know of personally anyway, that allow you to pull in VSX stars into their programs. In fact, George had to change the click on VFOT from VSX to VSX with an AUID. Because if you click on VSX, the screen fills up with stars in many cases. And in VSX, unfortunately, in VFOT, unfortunately, there's no way to find out or see what the amplitude is for that star. So literally, we could have a member who gets a field of view intentionally or not, gets 3,000 magnitude numbers for 3,000 stars in that field. And if he tried to upload that, it would really be worthless. Stars that are just flat. Fortunately, they don't have AUIDs, so you can't do that. That's the one saving grace. But in VFOT, Tony Van Munster, FRANSO. Tony Van Munster has gone to the trouble of giving you some information on the period and the amplitude, so you can make some educated choices. So where I'm going at is, could Sebastian give some more thought to you or all of us to how to deal with VSX and the large numbers of stars? There's an intention to increase it enormously, but how practical is it for us to use it as an observer?
Okay, yeah. So the question online basically was, could we put some more thought into exactly what type of stars are being imported into VSX, and what their amplitudes are? There actually are some fairly high guidelines as to the types of stars that we import into VSX. So anything that has a 1 millimagnitude or less, we usually don't import. Those those are space-based stars that you would want to, or things for like tests and things like that. We probably need to spend some time implementing different APIs for these different software packages to interact with, to pull out stars that are a little bit more useful, include things like magnitude limits or amplitude restrictions. There's some technical issues with how the database is designed, where what should be 2 fields is actually 1 field, so we can't split them out very easily. You have to look at other things to interpret what a amplitude value is, or a magnitude range value, for example. So we'll probably have to spend some time adding some additional capabilities there. But in terms of, remember, the VSX is 26% of our overall scientific impact. And therefore, it's being used quite often by professional astronomers, because they know they can go to this place and they can get information, or at least as much information as possible on a given star, without having to hunt it down inside of the literature. And so I think that we're going to continue to grow VSX, but we need to implement tools or filters or something that make it easier for our observing community to use. Cliff.
Brian, there were some indications in the presentation this morning that exoplanets spark an interest in a certain segment of the amateur astronomy community. But there are other aspects of this meeting that would indicate that they're not well represented. And I wonder if you might comment on that sort of dichotomy.
Yeah, could you maybe give an example? I'm thinking maybe like the Flare Star program is probably one of them that you're alluding to.
Well, you mentioned that the growth in the exoplanet database has been pretty dramatic. I mean, in terms of what's happening, and yet I don't see anything on our schedule list.
Yeah.
Weekend that exoplanets are being talked about, and I wonder if there might be some untapped interest there.
Yeah. So for those of you that are online, Cliff was asking, why aren't there any talks on exoplanets? What about these kind of underrepresented groups within the AAVSO? So when the strategic plan was built about 2 years ago, I hadn't actually as far as I can tell, none of the reports that have been given in the last decade or so actually split out the observers in anything aside from the AID. basically we ignored AVSpec, we ignored ExoDB, and we ignored the solar database. And so 2 years ago was the first time that you saw that multicolored plot where we could actually see that significant growth in exoplanet observers. The board is going to be evaluating our performance on our strategic plan. We had a deep dive at it yesterday and identified some deficiencies. And if necessary, we'll make course adjustments to it so that our plan for 2025 to 2029 is not set in stone. We need to take into account current realities and maybe make some adjustments as we go ahead. So I mentioned a little bit ago that we're going to be vacating the office. If we can find a tenant, we might be able to recover around $80,000. And Bob here, he sees $80,000, but he and I also see 1 FTE. So we could hire a person to work on exoplanets in that situation. So we may have some resources that we can devote to those other topics. And in terms of the lack of very many talks about exoplanets, I could assure you that if we had received them and time permitted, Joyce Guzik she was the chair of the abstract committee. She probably would have streamlined them in. So we could go back and we could look to see if there were any talks on exoplanets that were submitted. But I'm somewhat afraid that we probably didn't see them here because there's other venues for them to go to. Okay, so I'll take one more call, one more question, and I'll go to Bruce. Oh, you turn it on. Okay, so there was a statement from online just indicating that Foranzo takes it into mag limits.
Foranzo has a magnitude range than the stars which are taken in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we'll probably start interacting more with the vendors that are producing photometric software to try to see if they can start using our APIs. I ran into a couple vendors in the past. Actually, one individual that produces one of the more popular photometric software. He didn't even have a membership. He didn't even have an account on avso.org, but yet he was using our services. So we will be changing that over the next year. So trying to strike up good relationships with the developer community. Okay, so we'll move on. Next up will be awards. So Walt and Elizabeth, if you guys could come up. So usually the president and the executive director share turns on announcing different things. And so this year, Walt has agreed to be the handshaker. All right, y'all ready? Okay. So our first award that we're going to be discussing today is the announcement of an Argolander Society induction. So last night, the Argolander Society celebrated and welcomed Jay Miller. Jay's actually online, but Jay, we had a great party, even though you weren't there. So the Argolander Society recognizes donors who have made exceptional philanthropic contributions to sustain the AAVSO's mission. The dollar amount, in case you're curious, is $35,000. And so every year we invite our most valued donors in to share a special evening and have a variety of conversations about the broader strategic issues and where we think the organization is going. And so Jay, welcome to the Argolander Society, and we hope to see you next year in Santa Fe. Next up is the 2025 Merit Award. And for those of you that don't know, the Merit Award is the AAVSO's highest award. It's given to a member who the board has deemed to make an outstanding contribution to the association. And this year's recipient of the 56th AAVSO Merit Award is Bob Denny. And Bert, I believe Bob is actually online with us, and Bert, if you could bring. Okay. Oh, okay. So he's going to be coming online here. So I'll read the citation. So the 56th Merit Award is presented to Bob Denny in recognition of his dedicated friendship to the AAVSO for more than a decade, generously providing site licenses and ongoing support for his software. Through his company, DC3 Dreams, he has also provided financial support for AAVSO meetings, helping sustain the community's gatherings. His ACP program powers the operations of APAS and all of AAVSOnet, enabling efficient control and scheduling of observations. In addition to his direct support, Bob's broader innovations, such as the development of ASCOM and its successor, ASCOM Alpaca, have enabled countless amateur astronomers to pursue their passion and contribute meaningfully to the astronomical research. And so, Bob, if you'd like, I can bring you up on screen here.
I would like. That sounds good.
Yeah, terrific.
Somehow you guys hatched this plan. I did not know this was happening, and Stevie
Yeah,
did. Stevie, can you come here?
We colluded with your wife, I will say that.
Yeah, I found out, but I'm not gonna go on screen without her. So
Bob, would you like to say anything?
yes, I would. Am I muted? No, I'm not.
No,
muted.
you're fine. Yeah, we can
Okay,
hear you.
I've got my video on too. I don't know what else I need to do.
We can see you, so I don't know if you want to make
Oh,
any.
I didn't know that. Okay. Oh, I'm up there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I can see you and me. So there we go. Okay. Well, we're here. Thank you very much. It has been really wonderful to work with everybody at AAVSO. I'll say that in the earlier days of the scheduler, which was really the one thing that, if I have to say, I look back on the various things that I've done or created, the scheduler was probably the top thing. I love doing it. It was a real creative victory for me. And then to see Tom Smith and the gang and Arnie put that together and have it run the data acquisition for APAS hands off for all that time and just sit there and grind away and do those things, get the comp stars and everything totally automated, not only automated, but data driven and everything. That was a real thrill for me. That was one of the most rewarding outcome of that. I have other customers who love it and all that, but really the APAS project kind of is at the top of my list. So Arnie, thank you. And Tom Smith, I know you're not there, but I just talked to him like 2 months ago or something. And anyway, thank you. And thanks everybody. I really, Brian and whoever decided to, present this award, thank you very much. You may not know that I closed, I know I may have shouted there. Sorry if I blew anybody's ears out. That I closed sales for DC3 Dreams after 22 years. And each one of those licenses comes with a year's support. So we'll fulfill that obligation for the next year. And then on July 1st of next year, I'm going to flip the switch and enjoy what's left of my life without obligations and work. But I have spent a lot of time helping people and working with the software and everything. So I've got other things planned for my next phase. Thank you very much. And thanks to Stevie too. Without her, none of this would be possible. And I truly, truly mean that. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so there we go. Okay, so next up will be the Alcott Award. So the William Tyler Alcott Distinguished Service Award is given to an individual who the board has deemed as made outstanding contributions in mentoring or promoting variable star astronomy. And so the recipient of the 21st William Tyler Alcott Distinguished Service Award is Dr. Paula Scotty. Come on up to the stage. Yeah, so it's being presented for her promotion of variable star astronomy through her service and leadership on the AAVSO Council and as Council President, her involvement in cataclysmic variable star research in conjunction with the AAVSO members and observers, and her frequent, clear expositions of the topic on cataclysmic variables that have helped new observers enter the field. Dr. Scotty has contributed widely to the field of variable star astronomy in general and to the AAVSO, in particular a variety of dimensions, for decades. She served on the board for 9 years, including 2 years as president and 3 years as past president. Her support of the AAVSO, its missions and goals, and observers who enable and enhance the research has been unwavering. In her own scientific investigations, Paula has taken the AAVSO to the forefront of science with systematic multi-wavelength studies of the light curves of the AID. She has brought AAVSO observations to a series of high-profile results and even including them in programs on the Hubble Space Telescope and other space and ground-based research instruments to which they have contributed data. And the last paragraph, Paula has been a frequent speaker at AAVSO meetings, helping AAVSO members and observers learn about cataclysmic variable stars and helping to grow their appreciation and value of their contributions to the field. It is an honor to present our longtime colleague, friend, and member, Paula Scody, with the William Tyler Alcott Service Award. Thank you, Paula.
So much my research and enabled me to have my great career. And I would have been able to do it without all the observers that have helped along the way. But thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you again, Paula, and congratulations. Next up, our retiring board members awards. And so we'd like to honor Aaron Slisky, who could not be with us today, and Mark Hardacre for their service on the board this year. And then David Cowell, he actually retired from the position of past president last year. However, he wasn't present. And so if you'd like to come up, we can present you your award this year. David, I'd just like to say thank you. You were my first president and an incredibly good mentor to me. Thank you. Next up, we have a series of 25-year and 50-year member awards. And so for 25 years, I'll read your name. And then if you would please come up and shake hands with Walt. Stephen Cook. The next one's going to be awkward. Walt, you need to shake your hand with yourself. Yeah, okay. Chuck Pullen and David Trowbridge. So Stephen has been a member for 46 years, but this is the first time that he's been in person to receive his 25-year pin. Walt's just hit 25 years. Chuck Pullen's at 26 years, and David has been a member for 27 years. So let's all congratulate them for making it to 25. And lastly, we have one individual who has been a member of the AAVSO for 50 years, and Mr. Bill Dillon. Would you please come up? So not only did Bill serve as the nominating committee chair, but he was also past president and past council member of the AAVSO as well. All right, next up are observing awards. Elizabeth, I'm afraid I don't have a paper copy up here at the podium. Okay. Yeah, I'll read them. Okay, yeah, I can read them. There's 14 different observing awards. So the first of which is 100 visual variable star observations to Benjamin Bourgeois? No, I'm not. It's French. Bourgeois. Ben, are you here?
He actually has not arrived.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Yep, not here yet. Okay. Next up is 1,000 visual variable star observations to Bill Dillon. That's something. Yeah, no. I was just there's.
Years ago, but we had a policy that when you reach that level within that year, and she called, and after a while, everyone had made it, but not within that year. It was called the Donut Hole Award. I mean, it was from the old Social Security, but still didn't get included in that group. So we're recognizing that year. Oh. So this recognizes you as easy viewer.
Okay.
But you've got one of the.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, next up, we have Jeff Stone for your valuable contributions of 25 exoplanet transit observations. And Jeff, while you're coming up here, we'd also like to recognize you for a small 900,000 CCD observations contributed to the AID. Next up is George Silvis for a contribution of 25 exoplanet transits to the exoplanet database. We'd also like to recognize Cliff Kontanik for a total of 100 DSLR observations contributed to the AID. Next up is Richard Sabo for a 600,000 CCD observations contributed to the AID. Ken Menzies, we'd like to recognize you for 600,000 CCD CMOS observations contributed to the AID. Next up, I guess this one I can shake your hand. So Walt, we'd like to recognize you for 200,000 CCD observations contributed to the AID. Absolutely. Following, we have Bob Stevens for 100,000 CCD observations contributed to the AID. And Molly, could you get a photo? Next up, Sean Spratt. We'd like to recognize you for a contribution of over 50,000 CCD observations contributed to the AID. Next up, Jerry Samalek. We'd like to recognize you for a total contribution of over 1.6 million observations to the AID. And last but not least, Elizabeth Prochnow. We'd like to recognize you for a contribution over 1,000 CCD observations contributed to the AID. So that concludes our observing awards. Next up, our series of special awards. And one of the things that I get to do as executive director is look at the overall contributions of the organization and recognize individuals who have contributed to AAVSO in many different ways. And so this year, I would actually like to recognize Alex Dimitriou and Leo Ferning for their significant contributions to the AID through their volunteer efforts to integrate the Gaia DR3 variable star database into VSX, increasing the number of known variable stars from 2.2 million to 10.3 million. So Alex, you're available online. And so Bert, I'll ask you to promote him to a panelist. And Leo, please come up to the front. So Bert, did you find Alex or? Okay, so we'll give Alex just a moment to come back online.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Alex. So
Hi,
just to
Brian.
let you know,
Everyone.
yeah, if you'd like to turn your camera on, if you're like us to see you, but we'll get a picture of you with kind of Walt in the foreground of the screen here, I guess.
Hi.
So just a second here. Walt's going to come up onto the stage. All right. So 3, 2, 1, smile. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex and Leo. You guys have done an incredible amount of work over the last couple of years working with Sebastian, and thank you very much. You've made the organization stronger, and I've actually really enjoyed working with you guys as well. So thank you for your contribution.
Same here. Thank you, guys.
All right. And last but not least, we have one other special award. So as I mentioned a little bit ago, Elizabeth Wagen is going to be retiring from the AAVSO, sorry, after 46 years of service. And in recognition of her time at the AAVSO, Dr. Brian Skiff and the folks at the Lowell Observatory have generously donated an asteroid and named it after her. So asteroid number 30,300 is now named Wagen. So the one piece of award text I forgot to duplicate. So the citation reads, Elizabeth Wagen is an American astronomer who helped thousands of amateur astronomers realize their dreams of contributing to astronomy. Joining the AAVSO in 1979, she advanced to senior technical assistant and once served as interim director. Throughout her career, she has sustained the organization's missions, programs, and data collections. And so she has an asteroid named after her. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, so good. And I thought it fitting, since there is a piece of the universe that is named after you, she ought to have a piece of the universe. And this is a C-type asteroid, which is, from what I can tell, the most likely type of asteroid that 3300 actually is. So congratulations. You like to say something? Okay, that's the next.
Incredible. When this, let's see, this leaves me speechless. It did when I learned about it, and I'm still am, but I'm so over the moon. It was funny because when the minor planet list came out, somebody instantly posted to the forum, Elizabeth has a minor planet. And I didn't tell you this, but I saw that. Oh, and I think someone posted it in our Slack channel, and it immediately disappeared. It was like, she's not supposed to know about that time. And then Brian was like, you know, the cat's out of the bag, and there's no way to keep this a secret. So I learned about it at the beginning of October, and it took me days even to think of anything to say, and I still can't really think of anything to say, except I'm so touched and appreciative. And now, when it's time for me to try a different astral plane, I can go visit Janet and Margaret and Dorrit and all the AAVSO friends who have minor planets. We can all have tea. We used to joke about that. And so we'll share a cup of tea and maybe a little Turkish reke, and raise a toast to the AAVSO. But thank you for this singular honor. One of the greatest privileges of my life has been to spend these years with the AAVSO. I guess I have to put my glasses on after all. I didn't think I'd need to. Why? Well, for me, the answer is simple. The people, a broad range of extraordinary individuals who share a common passion and follow through on it. The work, an infinite variety of types and complexities, which I have loved over the years. Not always been fun, but I have loved it. The science, to be at the forefront of the discoveries, opening new windows on the universe, often to be among the first people to hear about them, to share that, and to have a tiny piece in some of the work. Amazing. The goals and the mission of the AAVSO, which I feel are so worthy, not just worthwhile, but worthy, and so important. And the opportunity to be of service to a cause and an organization I love and I care about very deeply. So with a full and grateful heart, I may be leaving as a staff member, but not as a volunteer, an observer. Yes, I will finally get my 100 Visual Observer Award. And as a proud member of the extraordinary AAVSO. And I look forward to my future with it. Thank you. Very much. Yeah, very much. It's been a grand ride and a grand adventure.
All right, so with that, that concludes the member meeting portion. So we're going to take a approximately 20-minute, I believe, coffee break. And there is coffee at the back of the room, so I can actually say that. So we'll reconvene at 11:30 for a stakeholder meeting. At that meeting, I'm primarily going to be discussing how AAVSO should react to sky surveys. So I'll have a couple of slides, and I'm going to be seeking your response about how I should communicate to the membership about the objects that we think are the most valuable for them to be observing. It's also an opportunity for you to bring up anything that you would like. So please take a little bit of time to think about that, and we'll see you all back at 11:30. It looks like most folks are on their way back to their chairs now. So just in the interest of time, I should probably get started. So this is going to be a stakeholder discussion, which is more or less an open mic moment for people. And I think the microphones are probably on. If not, just turn them on, leave them on, and just give them 3 seconds to actually activate. This is I have a topic that I'd like to discuss with you all, and I'm not going to present this whole presentation, but it's basically, you know, how I think the AAVSO should adapt to the Sky Survey era, and this is based upon a review of the technical capabilities of the different sky surveys that are out there, conversations with the professional community, great conversations that I've had with the team at LSST. So Melissa, thank you for coming to be our keynote talk right after this. So we got a good dovetail in here as well. And then also a series of conversations that I've had very informally with our sister organizations. And so Bob Buckheim, thank you for the last 2 years for allowing me to ask a series of questions about sky surveys and how amateurs, you know, want to engage with these types of technologies. And then I'd also like to thank Jeremy Shears at the British Astronomical Association's Variable Star section for allowing me to present to them last year. This is actually the presentation that I did to the BAA VSS annual meeting, which is just last weekend. So I'm going to skip over a lot of slides here, but kind of set the scene. And then after I've had the conversation with you all, we'll probably have a broader webinar that'll bring in more people and we'll kind of brief the community. But I want to get feedback from you because I understand that we're all very passionate about the objects that we observe. And I'd like to give a great example. The day that the AAVSO announced that they hired me, Somebody found me, they found my phone number and they called me within about 30 minutes of my job listing being, my face being posted on the website. And they said, hey, Brian, the AVSO has made an egregious error. 15 years ago, an individual who shall not be named told me that the type of star that I observe and the way that I observe it is not actually relevant anymore. I want you to reverse that decision. And I told him that unfortunately I agreed with that 15-year-old decision because it was actually quite accurate. I'm not going to discuss what it is, but that type of a reaction tells me that if I don't communicate this type of information to the membership properly, I probably won't have a job in another year. So here I'll just kind of set the scene really quick, and then I'll open up the mic, and then if there's any other things that we'd like to discuss as a stakeholder discussion, feel free to bring it up. We don't have to stay on this particular topic at all. And then I will have us conclude right at the top of the hour, and then we can continue discussions over lunch, for example. So kind of just setting the stage here. Over the last couple of years, I've been out looking to see what the different capabilities are in the Sky Survey era. And this slide here basically just says that astrophysics is really changing. So when I did my PhD about 12 years ago, it was very common for professional astronomers to study a single star in detail. I mean, that's what I did with Epsilon Aurigae. If you knew me from the Citizen Sky era, that's how you knew the type of work that I and Bob Stencil were doing. And that type of mode worked really well for pro-am collaboration because you could have a large number of people collaborating on a single object, much like what we saw with the Flare Star project earlier today, for example, right? But over the next decade, there's a whole bunch of different ground surveys and surveys on space telescopes, and they have really changed the way that professional astronomers do research. So there are still a few people out there that study stars in detail. So like Paula, for example, you do that quite well. But people that are younger than me are actually out there making inferences about hundreds of stars or entire classes of stars by using Sky Survey data. And they'll probably investigate a few stars in detail, but that changes the quantity and the quality and the type of data that they need. And AAVSO, I would argue, has to adapt. And so a couple examples of things that are either coming online or presently online is, of course, the Vera Rubin Observatory and the LSST, which Melissa is going to be talking about in her keynote talk after lunch. And so I'll focus on the right-hand side. This is an instrument called the Argus Array. And if you haven't heard of me talk about it before, it is 900 decimal point, 8-inch delta row telescopes. This is effectively one AAVSO in size. And these telescopes, they effectively, they sit basically in kind of like a bassinet that swings back and forth, and all of the telescopes look through a hole in the roof. This thing has a 120-degree instantaneous field of regard with the same type of magnitude limits and resolution limits of an 8-inch telescope. Every single star that this thing can see, all the way from approximately 4th magnitude down to 19th magnitude, will be observed with a cadence somewhere between 1 second to 30 seconds, right? And so, this intrudes quite heavily into the area that AAVSO traditionally operates. However, it is only going to have 2 filters, right? So that the theme on all of these other sky surveys, which I'll bring up a couple more here, the theme that we can find out is that they all have their individual limitations. And so after going through all of the different photometric sky surveys, I came up with this chart. And what it shows is the Vmag range on the vertical axis versus the individual sky surveys along the horizontal axis. The number of colors that you see in the bar is indicative of the number of filters that they have. And so amateur astronomers can observe usually from about -4 at the brightest end, all the way down to maybe 19th if they have an incredibly large telescope and really good equipment. And you can see all of these other different skies, the sky surveys that are here on the right-hand side. The vast majority of them are maybe 1 or 2 filters, and they really don't cover the brighter end, with the exception of a few of these surveys that are off to the right-hand side. And so, there's some opportunity, there's some limitations, and I'll skip over the details here. For our spectroscopic observers in the room, I did something very similar, and I looked to see what has been done out there for spectroscopic surveys. Here we have wavelength coverage on the vertical axis. The bottom one has magnitude coverage on the bottom axis. And the first 4 on the left-hand side are typical amateur equipment. And on the right-hand side are the variety of different sky surveys. You can see that most amateur equipment is primarily focused on the visible or maybe the near infrared regime, overlapping quite well with all of these different sky surveys that are out there. But when you come down here and you look at it from a magnitude perspective, amateurs basically rule the bright sky, and all these different sky surveys are looking at things that are like 10th plus magnitude, which are not easily accessible with amateur gear. So again, despite the fact that the sky surveys are out there, there is an opportunity space for us to produce data that can potentially be complementary, or depending on how we want to communicate this, there's different areas that we could operate in. I love this slide, right? The end of variable star observing, the end of amateur astronomy. Do you think the Verroon Observatory will kill amateur astronomy, right? Like there's been a lot of doom and gloom. And in all of these threads, no matter where you look, the answer is always no. There's always opportunities, just to make that relatively clear. But it's fun to put this up because it's a scary slide. And lastly, I'd like to highlight a conversation that I had with Ashish, who he is the Caltech Zwicky Transient Facility Machine Learning Lead. He told me basically, as was actually at one of the SAS meetings, he said that they observe about 100,000 transient objects every single night using the ZTF. And I said, hey, how many do you follow up on? And he says, oh, 10 to 15. I'm like, 10 to 15,000? He says, no, 10 to 15, right? And so this is a 0.015% follow-up, right? There is tons of opportunity here in order for us to go out and do science. But the question is, how do we pick what objects we want to observe? How do we know that things are actually relevant to science? And then what do we do with the data once we generate it if there's not necessarily a professional astronomer that's interested in it? And so, we decided to create this small research team to kind of explore, these kinds of questions. Like, what does it take to make a small team of amateur astronomers that have the capabilities to drive something from an idea to a paper? So from a very high level perspective, I'd just like to state that, the first disclaimer is, from what I learned from professional astronomers, they value long-running, consistent series of data over almost everything else. So if you have an observer that's been observing the same star for 20 years, they almost intuitively assume that that person knows what they're doing, right? And so from what I'm about to say, I will say that if you have been observing an object, keep doing it, right? That long-running time series data is actually incredibly important. And then the second thing is, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, right? I recognize that astronomy is a hobby of self-actualization, right? We go out there and we do it because we love it, right? This, amateurs, it's not your job, right? You do it because it's fun. And I don't want to step on that. So if there's something that you love doing, by all means, keep doing it, right? So what I've kind of come to is that, I'll skip over that slide. What I've come to is that there's a lot of different projects. And so within stellar photometry, anything that's brighter than 5th magnitude, Tom, right? The PEP groups, they are in absolutely dire need of data. And you heard Tom's call earlier at the meeting yesterday, that he's got some extra photoelectric photometers, single pixel detectors. That's how I learned how to do photometry. They're incredibly fun to use, right? And so they're one of the few instruments that can actually go out and observe stars that are this bright. My little 8-inch telescope saturates in 10 milliseconds on a 2nd magnitude star. And so I have a very special observing mode to allow me to do photometry on that using a digital camera. But these photoelectric devices can let you go out and look at it. More broadly speaking, anything that's brighter about 13th magnitude is too bright for most surveys, and that's 610,000 stars. And you might think, oh, that's not a whole lot. In AAVSO's database, we've only recorded data on 35,000 stars total. So, there's plenty of opportunity space. You can have your own star within that parameter place. And then finally, most surveys don't observe anything. They don't have the observational cadence to observe anything that's faster than about 3 days in terms of its period. So your cataclysmic variables, your things that go boom, anything that evolves relatively quickly is all fair game. And again, like our legacy stars, like Jerry, where you at, right? Like that legacy observing program that you run, we need to keep doing that because we have the full history on that star and we own it entirely. For stellar spectroscopy, anything that's brighter than about 6 magnitude is almost completely untouched. And there's 2,653 photometrically variable stars. And it turns out that most things that are photometrically varying are also spectroscopically varying in one way or another. There's 153 spectroscopic binaries in that range. There's actually a few more than that. Since I wrote this slide, I found more. Anything that's brighter than 8th magnitude are usually excluded from surveys. And so over 10,000 variable stars that could be done there. And the spectroscopic surveys don't have a revisit rate any faster than 15 days. So anything that has an orbital period faster than 15 days is, strongly within our realm. Lots of good stuff there. And a great example is that I looked at the SB9 spectroscopic catalog, and they find over 2,000 stars that have a period less than 15 days. Gaia, which we all believe is the most wonderful satellite, right? It has a gap here. It only found 703 of that 2,000. And it's simply because their sampling was pretty bad. And that shows you a great example of where amateur data can actually be complementary, because we can go look at these stars with a faster cadence and map out their orbits. Outside of the spectroscopic and the photometric side of things, exoplanet photometry is incredibly popular. It's also incredibly important because your transit data that you collect helps define when a planet is going to be in front of a star, and that helps determine when James Webb Space Telescope or any of the future generation space telescopes can actually go look at it, because they know it's going to be there. If you have a transiting exoplanet and you have an uncertainty of like 5 hours of when it's actually going to, the transit's actually going to occur, you as a professional astronomer have a very low probability of getting that observing time, compared to if you can say the transit starts, at this time plus or minus 5 minutes, right? It's much more impressive to communicate to the time allocation committees there. So by going out and observing exoplanets, you're helping refine that time of the orbital crossing of the exoplanet. Now, one thing that I think is really cool that is an unexplored area is actually speckle interferometry. If Russ Genet were here, he and some students, they often head up to the Mount Wilson Observatory, and they use the 100-inch and the 60-inch telescope up there to do speckle interferometry of close binaries. So there are a few people in the AAVSO that have meter-class telescopes in their backyards. And speckle interferometry is something that you could do. And there's about 19,700 Gaia binaries that you could actually go out and observe. And lastly, polarimetry, as we heard just yesterday, the field's basically completely open. And so these are places where I think that amateur astronomers can make really significant contributions. But I want to get your opinions on how I should communicate that beyond this type of a slide, right? Like when I write to the membership, what should I say? Should I communicate and say, these are the types of stars that you should be observing? Should I say, these are not the kinds of things that you should be observing? Should we approach it in a positive tone, a negative tone? How heavy of a hand should AAVSO have in guiding the research that amateurs do? So with that, I will shut off the presentation and open the floor to you. So Bill, after you turn the mic on, wait about 3 seconds and the light will go from red to green. And Bert, if you could turn that mic on, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think one of our biggest assets is that we've been around for over a century. And I wonder, a lot of these surveys, what happens when their money runs out? What happens to all that mountains of data? And I think maybe we can get grants or something for enhancing our ability to store variable star data, because we've been around, and I think it's a real weakness for a lot of these surveys that generate incredible amounts of data, and then people will be able to find it 10 years after their program is gone.
Yeah, so Bert, can I assume that folks online could hear that reasonably well? It seemed like Nancy could when she was listening.
I would say that most people can. A couple people still complain.
Okay, all right. So for those of you online, Bill Dillon was commenting that what happens when the surveys shut off? And the answer is the data disappears. We've seen that happen with several sky catalogs. Right now, I'm one of 3 people worldwide that has data from the Solar Mass Ejection Imager satellite, which was basically like tests for bright stars. but it has a bunch of various systematical issues. And the reality is, up until recently, most programs were not required to repose their data in a long-term archive. Now, that's actually changed under recent funding requirements. And so NOIR labs, for example, they can store data for some of the larger sky surveys. I'm certain that Rubin, for example, has a long-term data retention policy and, is ready for that. But a lot of the smaller sky surveys, the data just disappears. So, and whether or not we could get grants for keeping that, remember, like, I see data both as like a real asset, but I also see it as a long-term liability because it costs money to keep disk spinning. And I recently, went through a fairly large exercise dealing with APAS DR11, trying to figure out how we could store that and make it cost effective, because it was going to be something like $1,000 a year just to host the data just in drives, because there's so much data for the Epic photometry database. But if we make some slight decisions, we can drive that cost down to something more like, $20 a month or something like that. So $240 a year, which is a little better. So, well,
With regard to keep doing what you're doing, the story you have about going to AAS about the solar work is maybe worth mentioning a few words about it too.
yeah. So I need to think about exactly what I said to you the other day. Can you jog my memory a little bit more? I've had so many conversations.
So the story I remember, and you can correct me, was that when you were at the American Astronomical Society meeting,
yes,
2 years
thank
ago,
you.
thereabouts, talking to a number of the professionals doing solar work, and how valuable is the visual solar sunspot counts that the AAVSO has been doing for years and years and years. And as I remember, the answer was, "Oh, please don't stop, please, please."
Yeah.
This is the metric. This is how we've tied 100 years worth of stuff together to be meaningful, rather than a different band, a different detector, a different way of counting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I remember that conversation. Yeah. So I think this was probably in 2022. I was at a AAS meeting where there was a gentleman who received, some outstanding prize for the AAS. I forget exactly what his name was, but I could go back and find it. He was a solar astronomer, right? And I've had very little interaction with solar physicists throughout my career. And we were also in the process of evaluating our different programs and asking the hard question, is the data collecting actually relevant? So I spoke with the solar section leaders and I said, hey, who's using our data? And they said, we don't know. And I said, well, why are we doing this? And they said, well, because it's what we've been doing, right? And so I started pulling on that thread a little bit. And I spoke with this gentleman at the AAS meeting, and I learned how truly important our solar observations actually are. So some folks are asking the question, why are we observing why are we doing solar observations visually, right? There's digital detectors out there. We can do much better. The reality is that all missions are calibrated back to the visual, like all of the space missions, all the algorithms that they developed are calibrated back to ground-based visual observations, because that's what ties in with data that goes clear back to the 1500s. And the AAVSO's database and the Belgian database are the only two out there that are producing data that can be used for that specific purpose. Subsequent to that, I had a good conversation with Brad Schaefer, who was our Landault lecturer at last year's meeting. He and a colleague of his have grabbed all of AAVSO's data, and they're recalibrating the solar observations to correct the Belgian observations, because it turns out that is actually anchored to somebody who lived back in the 1500s. Right, and it's not necessarily the most modern and in line with current observations. So, in the end, I found out that the solar data is used by 430 researchers per year, and we had no direct visibility because there's one organization that downloads our data and disseminates it to all of them. And so, there's other instances of things like that that's happened within the AAVSO. And so, when we look at this, we try to look at everything a little bit more holistically. John.
Is this working? Okay. One of the things that we've got going is we have cadence. All right. And for short period phenomenon, my experience with the AAVSO database and the surveys,
is that the classifications that they give, very often the periods that they give are wrong because AI is, you know, artificial stupidity. And because they don't have the ability to stare at stuff. And we have literally a worldwide audience with the capability to run high cadence stuff. And that's the way you find out what it is. And that's the way you find out something that you didn't expect.
Yeah, for those of you that might not have heard it online, John Hoot was commenting that the ability for observers to go in and get good coverage on a given light curve allows us to figure out if a star is actually a particular type of variable star or not. And his observation was that the sky surveys often have wrong classifications, and that's absolutely correct. It turns out that Gaia actually to train their machine learning models, they downloaded VSX, the whole VSX catalog. We gave it to them, and then they train their machine learning models, and then they're able to classify things reasonably well to within like usually one or usually 5 different types for most stars that come out of Gaia. Now, the thing is now we've imported Gaia's data, and so we're feeding the machine, right? And so actually, Alex and Leo have been working on a whole bunch of really cool tools related to VSX that allows us to go through and make reasonably quick decisions about the classifications of stars. And so they've been working on RR rays here, where there's a single tool, a single dashboard that goes out and it retrieves data from a bunch of different sky surveys, phases them up, and you can look at it quickly and you can say, that's not an RL ray, that's a binary star, right? And we found 2 stars that they're classified as RL rays, but they're doing something that we've never seen before. So having humans in the loop doing this kind of work makes a pretty big difference. And I think with these machine learning classification libraries, the better we can make VSX, the better we can make the classifications. Go out and observe a star, collect data, get some very good light curves on it. Go take the choice course to figure out like how to actually do variable star classification from the light curves, and then submit revisions to VSX, right? We're making the world a better place, and we're helping the machine learning folks out and improving their models in the long run. George.
You were asking for feedback about how to communicate this or what to communicate about this era of all the surveys and doing citizen science research. We work with at Robert Ferguson Observatory in California with a lot of people who are new to this and who are just trying to figure out what to observe, what's interesting, and what would be important to do so that they're not wasting their time or anybody else's. And a lot of the advice that we give them is to go take a look at the AAVSO site and figure out from the individual SIGs what the recommendations are there, but many of them aren't updated with the survey era in mind. And many of the new folks these are high school kids or early college folks, undergraduates who are very interested in working with survey data and figuring out how and very capable of digging into all that stuff. So updating that kind of advice from the AAVSO, I think would be very valuable.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, George. So the recommendation here was update the documentation about the SIGs, provide more clear guidance about the types of stars that we're recommending that people go out and observe. And there was a third thing in there too. Okay, well, I'll watch the recording and I'll get that. Yeah. Daniel.
So just wondering, when you use AAVSO data in a paper and you're required to enter that in the acknowledgements, do you have any programs that do data mining to find out in what circumstances the data has been used and which past data are most useful? And can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so we don't have software that does that. We have an executive director that likes to read and skim lots of papers. But we think that now we can probably use machine learning to answer the questions that we have. In 2022, I skimmed 360 papers that referenced the AAVSO. So if AAVSO was anywhere within the full text, pulled it down and I skimmed 360 papers. We found that about 70% of the researchers were correctly using the citations that we requested, so like facilities codes. but the remaining 30% weren't. And I reached out to many of the authors and asked, hey, what's up? Some of them didn't know that they were supposed to cite the AAVSO. Sometimes they just, used the plot and didn't think like having a plot justified including like, an acknowledgement or something like that. We just recently updated our data usage guidelines that's much more clear about when you should be acknowledging the AAVSO, when you should try to bring in observers as co-authors. And also we added additional facility codes so that if you use the AID, any of the databases, the AID, AVSpec, ExoDB, there's now a facility subcode, which we can scrape out of the papers really quite easily. So going forward, I think it'll be a lot easier to mine that information out.
You're submitting letters or research notes, there's a hard word that actually includes the acknowledgements. If you can make the acknowledgement statement as short as possible, people are actually more likely to use it.
Okay.
It's just
okay, yeah. So that the
in general, research is getting better.
Yeah, so that the recommendation there was to kind of like minimize the length of the acknowledgement statement. And I'll go back and look. I think it probably did get longer, simply because we have a lot of different databases that we ask people to acknowledge. But I'll take a look and see if we can trim it down a little. So thanks, Daniel. Dave.
Yeah, just a high-level thoughts in terms of doing science, and first thing is always to look for your niche. I think you've done a very good job of drilling down where the opportunities are. The second part of science, again from a high level, is asking a scientific question. And I think we have a couple of ones that we've used for 100 years. The stars varying, what kind of variable star is it? Or the satellite data suggests that this might be an exoplanet, or maybe it's a false positive, which is it? But I think we need more questions. And we don't, we need to ask, before we start doing the data, and when the motivation to the data is to answer a question, which I don't think we're doing as good a job of.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation. And for those of you online, Dave suggested like, collecting a series of questions that you might ask as part of the research process, maybe to that end, but not really to a strong enough effect. The staff and we've started a new thread or a new section of the forums that I don't remember what it's called. It's like open research questions or open topics or something like that. And when we find something that's weird or strange, we post to the forums and we say, hey, here's an idea. This is where you might get started. Consider, comment here if you're interested in moving forward. We haven't seen a lot of traction about that, but we also haven't advertised. I think we only have 1 or 2 posts there that are up thus far. So, but that's a good point, Dave. So we'll see if we can make some improvements in that area. I thought I'd just ask Bruce, have there been any comments online for the Q&A? Okay, Bruce is going to take a quick look there. So, Mark.
I think it's a follow-up to what Dave just asked. At Friday's Board of Directors meeting, we used the phrase broker to describe the AAVSO. We're a broker of information between 2 communities. And your slides talked a lot about deciding what we can do based upon holes in the supply side of being a broker. But if you look at it from the demand perspective, what sources of information do we have about the need side, the demand side? Is there data that we can collect that then we can use as a broker to influence the behavior on the supply side?
Yeah, that's a great question. And for those of you online, Mark was talking about like the brokerage relationship that AAVSO serves between the producers of data and the users of data, being professional astronomers. I mentioned during my director's report that I have a series of scripts that I've ran that like go out and they look in literature, for example, and they attempt to figure out like who's studying what type of things, where they're located, who their friends are. And so we have some things that will allow us to kind of explore the consumer side of the problem. In other situations, so that's really indirect, right? It's not a direct, this person wants this data, with the exception of observing campaigns where we have direct feedback there. Dipankar and the polarimetry SIG, I tasked them specifically with saying how many professional astronomers are out there that actually want polarization data. And that we approached it much more from that type of a problem rather than the ground up, let's go out and do some observing problem. So we're now eating into lunch hour. So Bruce, if you could just relay maybe 1 or 2 questions from the folks online.
Alex writes and says that we've been trying with the RR project to download and store ZTF, AAVSO, Google, and Gaia DR3, about 120 million data points to be saved.
Yeah, so
we're trying to load that in.
Yep. So Alex and Leo, that's one of the great VSX projects.
Maybe themselves suggest targets.
Yeah, targets recommendations is a common request that we get. George Silvis, I can hear you saying already, we have the target tool. It tells you what to go look at. The problem is that the target tool looks at things that we've observed and says please go back and look at them again to kind of like maintain that continuity of knowledge. But it's not integrated with the observing campaigns, right? So one of the things that we're going to look at in the next year is trying to make it easier for people to discover things that they might want to observe. I don't know exactly what tools we're going to be building in that area, but like making our observing campaigns be able to generate an alert notice automatically, integrating them into the target tool, for example, to make them much more easily discoverable. Those are the series of things that we're going to be looking at. So I know we still have a series of questions, but I don't want to, I don't want people being hangry at me. So, but okay. So thank you all for a wonderful morning member meeting. And so we'll break for lunch. We'll come back in 2 hours, actually at 2 p.m. Pacific time. And for those of you that are online, don't forget when you rejoin, there's a different link for the rest of the science meeting. So we'll see you in a couple hours. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, Elizabeth. Yeah, thanks. Yep. Group photo. So yeah, group photo. We'll do it up front. So for those of you online, I'll go ahead and shut off the video feed here. So we'll see you in a couple hours.